Today on Nova Legends, I have Briar Woods football coach Mike Burnett, who has taken his team to the state semifinals. Once again, he's made a career of taking his team to the state playoffs. Coach, nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Ah, thanks. No problem at all. Happy to do
Oh,
it.
oh yeah, great, great. Well, let me give your background for some of the folks who may not know you. Most of my listeners are more Fairfax County, Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, so they might not know you quite as well. But you coached at Santa Monica High School, a place that sounds kind of fashionable and kind of cool out in California. And then you came to Broad Run, which is something we're more used to around here. And you won two state titles at Broad Run between 2006, 2009. Then you opened up Tuscarora out here in Leesburg. You were there between 2010, 2018, got to three state title games. Um, then you went to back to California. You went to Harvard Westlake for a year, coached there, big time private school program there. Had a winning record there your first year. Took a few years off around COVID, and then Loudoun County called for you again, and you came back and took the job at Briar Woods. First year 1-9, beat Riverside last game. Second year 7-4, third year 8-4, and now you're back where you used to being. Coach, did I get most of that right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Yeah,
It makes me tired hearing all that.
yeah. Well, you had to live all that. Um, well, Coach, I want to start with coming back to Briar Woods. Now, I just moved to Loudoun County. I'm a lifelong. I went to Robinson and Fairfax, and my older kids went to Yorktown and Arlington, and now we live here in Rivers. We live here in Lansdowne, right next to Riverside High School. I read that you really liked Loudoun County football, so you wanted to come back and coach here. What is it about the Loudoun school football culture that you like so much? What did you miss when you went away?
Well, I had a great opportunity to go coach in a private school setting. And, I always tell people I'm more of a program builder than as much of a program builder as a football coach. Coaching is one part of football. The other part is getting all the pieces moving together in a year-round program. And building kids and relationships and taking kids as freshmen and turning them into productive players and people. No disrespect to the private school model, but it's more of a, hey, let's go get good players, and then go compete at a really high level. And it's a lot about recruiting and getting kids there. And that's just really not it. It's just not a great fit for me. I like to have kids from eighth grade to seniors and watch them grow. And that's the part I liked. That's the part I missed. And so for me, Loudon offers that. We don't, there's obviously we're in a different world where kids are moving schools one year to the next and here and there and everywhere. And we have that in Loudon. I'm not saying that we don't. I think we may have less of it. And that makes it better. Like this group of kids that there's not one kid on my team who didn't play freshman football for me. I don't know if there's many coaches that can say that anymore. I really don't. I think that there's so many, everybody's kind of looking out for themselves, and doing what's good for them. And we got a really good group of kids who came in 4 years ago and toughed it out. And that's what makes me, really most happy.
Yeah. Well, you don't love the private school challenge, but you're not a Mickey Thompson and stayed at one school your whole career. Do you enjoy a fresh challenge at a new public school? Is that something that you like doing as well?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've been in education for 30 years teaching, and I love teaching. I love coaching. But I think one of the challenges of education is that, you stay in the same place, it gets old, and I think a lot of teachers suffer from that. And I just have tried to avoid that, to be honest. When a new challenge, a new opportunity comes up, that refreshes me. I think that's the challenge. That's the hard part of staying in it. It gets tiring and exhausting, but for me, that's what I like.
Yeah. When you're at Broad Run, when you're at Briar Woods, when you're at Tuscarora, are the kids the same? I mean, and we learned this when we moved to Loudon. Every neighborhood's a little different, and which is kind of cool. You can kind of pick your flavor when you come to Loudon, whatever you're looking for. We're kind of downsized in terms. I'm an older guy, but what about you? Do you find the kids the same no matter where you go, or are the kids a little bit different?
That's a great question, actually. I really like that question. I think that. They're a little different. You know, I think especially in Loudon, Loudon's like a little sliver, you know, as you get to eastern to western Loudon, you know, now northern to southern Loudon, even I
Yeah.
think you've got a whole different groups of people with different unique challenges. I think in some respects, you know, for me, the biggest difference is how different kids are today versus 20 years ago. That's the biggest challenge, you know, is that I think that coaches today are finding, you know, especially a lot of coaches my age who are just finding that the world is different. I'm not, you know, I'm not saying, oh, kids are terrible today and they were great 20 years ago. It's just they're different. They have different interests. Their attention span is different. Their commitment, you know, and expectations are different, I think. And I think that's the bigger challenge now is the kind of the, you know, I always kind of think it's the post-COVID generation, where, you know, we used to just open the weight room and kids came and we had kids and they were happy to be there and they wanted to be there. And now you got to be a little bit more of an entertainer and get kids to buy in. And because there's a lot, they have a lot more than we ever had growing up to do.
Do you think a lot of this is caused by social media?
Absolutely. There's no question. I mean, they're, you know, like they in so quickly, you know, on their phone, they can be happy. You know, they can play games and they can communicate and they can be with their friends. You know, I think for all of us, I mean, I love sports, and because one, it was the option I had to be social. I mean, that was where my friend groups were. That was, if I didn't do that, I went home and did what, you know? And I think for these kids, they have, like I said, they have all this social media access. And so the idea of, well, going to the weight room is, nah, that's not that exciting, you know, and that's getting harder and harder to find, I think. I see it in the classroom, I see it on the football field.
Yeah. Coach, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New England. I grew up in Massachusetts. Yep. I was New England forever. And then I was a lawyer. I practiced law outside of Boston. And you know, woke up one day and and I don't want to do this. Headed to the West Coast, you know, and just honestly got a job coaching part time while I was figuring out what I wanted to do. And I just loved it. I mean, first day I started coaching, I was like, wow, is there any way I could do this, you know, and get paid? And so then I got into teaching, and I like teaching as much as I like coaching, thankfully. And so that's kind of how I ended up there, and that's how I started coaching.
Did you play football, coach?
I did. I played football, Division III football, up in Maine. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, you're not just a coach, you're an unbelievable record as a coach. What do you attribute that to? Were there early coaches that had a profound effect on you, or is it your ability to change with the times and the game? Are you a tactician? Why are you so successful as a coach?
Well, I appreciate that. Honestly, I'd like to think there's an element of humility to it, which is that, you know, when my very first year at Santa Monica High School, we were 0-9-1. We actually had ties back then. And it was, whew, and I mean, I remember talking to my wife and saying, you know, maybe this just isn't for me, you know, like maybe this just isn't working. And she was wonderful. And we were like, she's like, I think this is for you. And I went out and I went to the schools out there, Modern Day, and I went to Concord de La Salle at the time, and I met with their coach. I just was a young guy, and I just was like, "What do you do? Like, how do you get kids to work hard and do this?" And I did what they did. I tried to emulate what successful people were doing, you know, and a lot of those things worked and some things didn't, you know, and I think that's the big piece is realizing when some things don't work, you got to change. And that's what I mean about this era. Like this has been one of the toughest transitions for me because like I said, I feel like kids are so different and it's been so challenging. But if I try to do things the way I did 18 years ago at Broad Run, we would not be successful. And I think that's the piece is just kind of trying to reinvent yourself as the world reinvents itself. And so I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of you know what I think matters.
So basically, you feel like now, and unlike at Broad Run, now you have to entertain, you have to engage the kids to get them to buy in, to get them in the weight room, to get them at the right level where you can compete at the highest level. Is that what? basically
Oh,
you just,
absolutely. Yeah, I think student engagement in classrooms and I think in the way in football is really really challenging right now. I think especially coming out of I think COVID had a big factor. For a year they sat by themselves and connected electronically. And I think they liked it. I think that's the thing people don't understand is that for a lot of kids, they're like, well, this is easy. This is a lot easier than going out and talking to people and asking questions in class and going to the weight room. And so getting kids back to that sense of, to me, like social normalcy has been really hard.
yeah, you know what's interesting is if you look at Vienna and Madison, incredibly successful program, the kids all want to play for the high school. They grew up in the Vienna youth organization. It's easier for them to get buy-in because it's such a status in the community playing for Madison. South Lakes is like that in basketball, Hayfield in basketball. Loudon, it's tricky because the school boundaries change so quickly. Some of the schools aren't very old. So these kids don't grow up wanting to be Briar Woods football players, or you don't have this out here as much because the culture is just in the history is just being built. So it's really hard to really lean on that when you're trying to build culture at a school.
Oh, you're spot on. I mean, I think that's the greatest challenge with Loudoun County is how quickly. I mean, you have kids who start at one school and then Independence opens and they end up in Independence. I mean, half of our kids, we lose half our kids, and then Lightridge opens and another high school opens, and the boundaries are redrawn, and we all have kids who play for us, and their parents are like, "Do I have to move now to keep playing for you?" And that's why honestly, like I always give her a lot of credit to Coach Thompson. He and I are good friends because he was able to do that for an incredibly long period of time. And like we're good friends and we're alike in some ways and we're really different in others. And I think that's one that he was able to really develop and keep that culture there, which was really impressive.
Yeah. Well, I know kids have changed generally, but if you can you compare the kids in California at Santa Monica and also Harvard, Westlake? Maybe those are private school kids, but how are the kids from California different than the kids here? And is the football culture different? I know the private schools play with public schools out there. I know that, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't find the kids honestly to be very different. I really don't. I think that out there, there's so much movement of kids. Like it is a kids, there's no sense of community out there. There really isn't, in the sense of like, oh, these are the kids who were raised here, who grew up in this neighborhood. Um, there are stories out there where kids their senior year in the fall transfer to play for one school and then come back and graduate from the school they went to high school. I mean, it just you're just going, I can't deal with this. And it is. It's a little bit the Wild West, as far as that goes out there. And I think that's the biggest difference. And so you end up with these super teams out there, and everybody thinks California football is so great, but it's great at the top. It's not that great in the middle and in the bottom because there's not a lot of programs that build things from the bottom up out there. I think that's the difference. When you come to the East, you have more of those programs.
yeah. Well, you're in the coolest place in the world. You're in Santa Monica, and all of a sudden you're in Sterling, Virginia, and you're Broad Run. I mean, how did you hear about Broad Run from Santa Monica?
Well, that was my wife. My wife is from Southwestern Virginia, and a smart man follows his wife,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. I'm in Rivers. I'm in Lansdowne now. So
yeah, yeah, and so we it was just it's living in Santa Monica is almost unmanageable as a young family. We had two boys living in a one bedroom apartment, and she just had enough. I mean, to be honest, and so she actually found the job. She said, "How about?" She's from Southwest Virginia, and I was like, "I'm not sure I want to go to all the way there." And so she knew this, Loudon was booming and growing, and there was opportunities, and so we just applied on a whim, and I got offered the job, and kind of took the leap.
yeah. What town is she from in
She's from
Southwest?
Martinsville.
Oh, okay. Oh, great basketball history there. Did she go to Martinsville High School or
She
did
went to Martinsville High School. Yeah, Jeff Atkins, a good friend of ours, who was
is
there. He won state championships and played
I've
up
been
there.
trying to interview Jeff Atkins for a long time. He's a great coach, great player. I've interviewed Lefty Drizel, who he played for
Yep.
at Maryland, but Atkins is great. I know he went through some health things a couple of years ago. Hopefully he's doing well. But
Yeah.
Martinsville was the crown jewel of Virginia basketball in the 80s. I mean, they had a coach named Husky Hall, one of
Husky
the
Hall.
greatest
Yep. That
One of
was
the
my
greatest
wife's
coach.
PE teacher.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's just
He
amazing
helped.
coach. There's a famous story. He lost in the final of the state because they won every year, and he's driving back to Martinsville on the bus, and they cross the Dan River to go to Danville, and he throws the runner-up trophy into the river, and that's the story. Yeah. So anyway, you get to Broad Run, and I don't know if Broad Run having a football tradition, but maybe I missed that. How were you able to turn that into a two state titles so quickly?
Well, I think that, the big difference there was things were so new here, and it wasn't, like you said, there wasn't a lot of football culture here. There really wasn't. There had been some good teams, and I think, Coach Thompson had started building his program, I think, at the time. And it was just a different football. That was very different back then. In California, it's a 12-month year. I mean, kids like they take football as a class, the last block of the day. And so yeah. So during the off season, I had my team in the weight room and gave them a grade, and that is such a difference. And the level of play was so much better that when I first came here, I was like, you mean you start with the kids in August? I was like, and so I came in and I said, well, I'm going to open the weight room every day after school, for an hour and a half, 5 days a week, 12 months a year. And I expect you to be here. And I'll be here. And they showed up, to be honest. Like kids, I think that was the big difference when I talk about culture is they were so happy to have coaches there all year round, and they just bought in, and they just outworked everybody. And I'd love to say, oh boy, I came up with a great scheme. And my wife's like, you're still a really good coach. You downplay that a lot, but I'm a work ethic guy. It's like you got to put in the work, and you got to prepare. And and those kids bought in very, very quickly. And since that time, that model has now become more normal. I think we're now the expectation is you got to run a year-round program. You got to have kids in the weight room. You got to do 7-on-7 in the spring. And now we have green days. And so the playing field's a lot, it's a lot more even now than it was back then. And I think that was the difference. And I think that's why we had such quick success.
Yeah, I mean, a great coach could be Bobby Knight or a tactician like a Krzyzewski, or he can be a Jim Boeheim who's able to get great talent and get them to play at a high level. They both could be great coaches, and everyone has a different way of doing it. Sorry for all that basketball. So, Coach, when you won a state title, well, before you get the state title, how'd you decide how you wanted to play tactically and strategically? So you're head coach at Broad Run. How'd you decide how you were going to play?
Well, I think that's another thing that I think we've been able to do over the years is assess what you have. I mean, if you don't have a quarterback, you can't throw the ball. You can't be like, hey, we're going to run the air raid system. Yeah, well, one of the old coaches told me one day, he said, you know what, coach, at the bottom line is you're only as good as your quarterback. I always found that interesting. I said, well, we better find one then, and it doesn't have to be a great, somebody who can run an offense or just manage the game. And that's a big piece. And if he can throw, great, we'll throw. If not, I think that you got to be able to say, well, we can control how big and strong we are. If we can get in the weight room and we can be stronger, then we can have a good running game. I mean, there's things we can do that suit our abilities. And then when you're lucky enough to have talent, you got to adjust to that. I was really blessed to have an all-state tailback. And I was like, well, how about we just give him the ball 25 times? Like that would, it's not, I don't have to be a genius. And then I was blessed with a great all-state quarterback. And I was like, how about we just throw the ball 25 times now? And so, a lot of it just, like I said, it's just kind of, adapting to your surroundings.
Did winning a state championship change you as a coach and a person?
In a way, yes, I did. In the sense that it was validation of the way to do things, for me. And because there's a lot of times you work hard and you don't get reward. I mean, that's I'm a pretty faithful guy, and I don't think that, it doesn't always work that way. The good aren't always rewarded, and everything, life isn't fair, and you have to kind of accept the consequences. And so sometimes when you're really working hard, you're putting in that much time and that much energy, and you're not successful, it's easy to question yourself. It's easy to get away from it. That at the end of the day, this is about, building kids' character and being there every day for them and working hard, and that matters. And sometimes it seems like it doesn't. Sometimes teams of less character beat you, and for me to win it with a really great group of kids, it just told me that, no matter what happens over the years, I'm going to stick to this. This is just who we have to be. That we're going to be about teamwork. We're going to be about trusting in each other. We're going to be about working hard, and then we're going to be about accepting the results as hard as we go, and see how far it can take us.
Yeah. Well, you go to Tuscarora next, a brand new school. I mean, Broad Run's a very old school, one of the original Loudoun County schools that was around when I was in school. Then you go to Tusky and you open the school. What's the experience like to open a school and try to build your culture, order the uniforms, everything in a school you're creating?
Yeah, that was why I took the job. I mean, I live in Leesburg, so a school opened in Leesburg. I got to bring my entire staff into the building as teachers. It was, everybody's like, why did you leave? We just had won 28 straight games at Broad Run. And at the time, it just was like, it just seemed, it was a great opportunity. I felt like we had done a great thing here. I think we kept it there. I think Broad Run was able to keep the culture of football there, and we got the opportunity to do it somewhere else. And for me, that was important. I think everybody talks about, oh, you're not loyal, you do this. Everybody moves on, like as soon as their kids graduate, the families move on. And there's just, I had one of those early coaches told me, as opportunities come, coach, he goes, just remember, there's always more kids, like you feel like I can't leave these kids. Well, there's more kids. And they need you. And so don't be afraid to move on and help a different group of kids, and I would hope I feel good about, if there's one thing I feel really good about, is that I look at the programs I've left, I look at the continued success, and I think that it's impact maybe more kids and more communities than it would have been if I, had stayed in one place.
Yeah. Well, one thing I noticed about Tuscarora is they seem to be good at everything. They're good in girls basketball, they're good in boys basketball, they're good in football, they're good in soccer. What is it about that school? They seem to have an awful lot of success in many schools. They just have a great demographic, or
It's really a great demographic. It's just a nice gritty. You have a little gritty kids. You have a little bit of everything. It's just got a good slice of Loudoun County, I think. And I think that really gives them and they've been really blessed to have some good coaches out there, I think too. And I think that really helps.
yeah. Well, you got the three state final games, I believe, at Tuscarora. This happens a lot to coaches. I'm interviewing some of the girls soccer coaches in the collegiate Final Four, and they have so many game they have so many games in the postseason where they come down to penalties. College soccer is crazy like that. But anyway, there's almost no rhyme or reason sometimes to the years they win the whole thing and the years they get close. The best teams sometimes are the years they got close, and the teams that, well, I didn't think we had much that year. That's the year they won it. When you look at the two state titles you had at Broad Run and the three runners up you had at Tusky, does it make sense, or could it have been mixed up and could they have been changed, you think,
Uh,
or
you're really insightful.
oh,
I tell people that all the time. I mean,
thank you.
the 2014 team I had at Tuscarora was the best team I ever coached. I mean, nobody came close to us, and we had two all first team all state players go down in the first quarter. Yeah, one with a torn ACL and one with a high ankle sprain. And I mean, at that level, you can't come back from that. I mean, it's just, I mean, we lost by 3 points, but we were ahead 13-0 at the time. And it would have been, ironically, we were playing LC Bird, who we play on Saturday. Like you look back and you go, why? I don't get it. Like this was meant to be. And like you said, in 2008, our first state championship, it was shocking. I mean, I remember us hugging each other going, are we really going to the state championship and this is a team this year that, I don't know, expectations it's been tough. We've had a lot of injuries, and I would not have thought it would play out like this. But it does. And it's always a little kind of magical sometimes, and sometimes it's tragic, but like you said, I always tell the kids, like even every football game comes down to three plays. You just don't know when they are. That's the problem. You could trace every game to three plays and say that those three plays changed the course of this game.
Yeah.
I just got to play everyone like that's the next one because you don't know because it does change a bounce, a play, an injury, um, and that's I don't know. That's why I like coaching. It's life. That's the way life is. My life comes down to three plays sometimes. I feel like at home, and I can tell you which ones I got wrong.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It reminds me of a Bronx Tale, one of my favorite movies. So you come back home to Briar Woods. Briar Woods had unbelievable success early. I think they won three state championships about 10, 15 years ago. And they had some tough times. A lot of this is probably what you mentioned before, the boundary changes. They're probably losing some kids and but you get to Briar Woods and you lose your first 9 games there. This is a coach that's had incredible success in Loudoun County, and you're 0-9. How sweet must that Riverside win must have been? That was that a great win for you to win that last game of that first season?
Oh yeah, it's the great part about high school sports is they're all sweet. They really are. Like that's what I tell the kids. Just enjoy it. It's not always like this. And so for us, that was a big one. It was a tough year coming. That was our first coming out of COVID and trying to build something kind of out of nothing. And it was hard. It's hard to keep the kids motivated. It's hard to keep kids there. And that one win kind of sparks it and gets the kids to show up and work harder. And I think that's why winning matters. Everybody say, "Oh, it's not about win." It certainly does. As far as keeping the kids believing in what you're asking them to do.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a tough record that first year, even though it ended off the season really well. The season ended very well. It's always a danger the kids are going to transfer somewhere else when you're losing. So you have to keep these kids there. So after your first year, were you worried about that? Like, I'm beginning to build this thing. You have a great reputation, so everyone knows you're a proven winner. But you got these kids, they don't have the longest memories in the world, and the parents, their memories are terrible as well. What did you do to keep the kids? Were you worried you were going to lose some of these kids the next year?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're 5 minutes from Stonebridge. I mean, it's a lot. And 2 minutes from Independence. Which are two schools having a lot of success. When we're struggling, and it's like you got to believe in what you're selling. You really do. And for me, I've kind of always believed we did lose a couple kids, not and it's just you're like, well, those aren't kids you build programs off of. Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of said that. People are like, oh, coach, you got to get some transfers. I go, really? Is that what we're doing? Because these kids right here, like this, that's why this group's really special to me. I mean, we got about 13 seniors and they have been here through it and they stuck it out. And those were the kids, like you said, who, when their parents were telling them that, why don't you do this and why don't you go here? And their social media is telling them, why don't you do this and why don't you, they stayed and they worked hard and they trusted that we could turn things around and have the kind of year that we've been able to put together this year.
Yeah. Well, you had an amazing year in 22 where you went from 1-9 to 7-4, lost in a regional final, I believe, to Patrick Henry Roanoke. That was a tremendous turnaround. Was that mostly young players that you were able to do that with?
Yeah, really young. We were really young that year. We had a couple. The thing we did have was a handful of kids who really were older that helped us. Not many. And then it was this group of kids when they were sophomores. And they were just so young. I mean, I remember that first playoff experience is hard, and I think it helps us now. This year, it's really helped us. These kids have played in a lot of playoff games, but that first year was tough.
Yeah, first year stuff. Lost to Stonebridge last year in the regional final as well, I believe. This year, the season's gone really well. Open up the season with a 7-6 loss to John Champ, that's interesting because anyone who's seen both your teams play, those are two high-powered offenses, and it was a 7-6 game. What was that game like?
Well, that was the day they canceled the game because of weather. We had to play it at 10 o'clock in the morning the next day.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah, and one of our starters broke his ankle in the first quarter, like one of our seniors, and it was just a, you know, sometimes, like you said, like it's just a bad vibe, and we turned the ball over 2 or 3 times. We missed a field goal to end the game, a chip shot, and those are the times you're like, wow, I didn't see that one coming. But I think the good thing it showed us is how good our defense could be, and our defense has really been the difference this year. And I think we were able to build off of that, even though the kids were pretty discouraged.
Yeah. Well, one of your losses is to a very good North Stafford team. The Stafford schools were really competitive this year. They were very, very strong. North Stafford, I believe, was in first or second place in that division most of the season in the Class 6. Played them really tough. Even though it was a loss, you must have felt pretty good about that effort.
We did. I mean, they had their running back is phenomenal, and he made us look bad. I think he had 3 carries of 50 plus yards, and that was the game. Yeah, I mean, you can't come back from that. And the other thing is we have really struggled with injuries. I mean, it's one of those things that we have. We were down 4 starters at one point, which is two-way starters. So that's 8 starters.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, like it's a cool team. I mean, we put kids in that probably weren't planning on playing a lot. I think that's what's helped us. Everybody's like, wow, the last 2 games, you guys are, well, part of it is those kids are not healthy. We've got our guys back, and the young kids who played are still playing. And so it's a really nice mix. And thankfully it kind of worked out that way.
Yeah. Well, one of the most interesting games of the year, and I promise you I'll get to some of the wins real soon, was the loss to Stonebridge. And the reason why I say that is Stonebridge had a very tough season. Coach Golston, his first year there, replacing a legend. Mickey didn't do him any favors with the schedule that he left him. Quince Orchard, Dunbar, Baltimore, I think 40-game winning streak, something crazy. You always there's always a danger of losing the team, but they won a game late. I forgot who they beat, and then they're able to beat you guys. They were down 12-0. I understand your running back was hurt early in that game, wasn't able to play. But that was one of the biggest upsets of the year because all of a sudden Stonebridge was out for the count. They are back up and they're back in the playoffs. Tell us a little bit about that game, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I think there's a big misperception of Stonebridge. I mean, they're talented. I mean, they've got guys on defense with offers from Oklahoma and Michigan. We don't have that. I mean, they have players, and as on the defensive side of the ball, they're as good as anybody. I mean, they're a really good defensive team. I think they struggle offensively. They just finding their kind of their mojo, but they're a really good defensive team. And like I said, it was again one of those games where, we're down 2 of our best players. It's high school football. I mean, we don't reload, and we don't um, we don't have backups, and sometimes you get to your third string guy, and that's a kid who should be playing JV football, and he's out there playing against, kids who have offers to go to Michigan. It's a tough result. And so, I felt like we played well. Again, it wasn't our best game. I thought they played really well. They deserved to win. It was one of those. But I also think defensively, they're a lot better than people give them credit for. I mean, even when you look at the games that they played, the teams that they played, I mean, Madison's in the state semifinal in 6A, and they struggled against Stonebridge. I mean, offensively, they couldn't do anything against them. And so, I give them a lot of credit, and I think I give the coach credit hanging in there. And, it's just, and it's also a tough game. It's always a local game, and
Yeah.
kids are always fired up.
I was very happy for them. It was great. You hate to see a team go through that. And again, I watched the Dunbar Baltimore game. They were very much in that game until late, and that's a very good team. I don't think they've lost this year. So I saw you guys against Riverside. Your wide receiver, Colin Capistrant, he must have had like 15 catches that day. I took photos that day. I'll send them to you. And every time I took a photo, he was reaching up and making a catch. Your quarterback, Brady Carmichael, I understand he's going to the Navy, does a great job. And your running back that day was Lucas Roser, but I understand when I went online that he's more of a linebacker than a running back, but he had a big day that day. So tell us about some of your top players.
Yeah, it kind of starts with our quarterback. I mean, he makes it tick, Brady. He can run, he can throw, he plays linebacker. He's kind of an old school high school football player, and he has stayed healthy despite the beating he's taken at times. And that's been the difference for us because he makes us tick. Um, and then Colin, you said at wide receiver, he is a tremendous receiver. He catches everything. We live in a world where everybody's about metrics and stars, and yeah, he's not a 4.5 40 kid, and he's not a 6 foot. He doesn't have the wingspan, but we just throw it to him and he catches it. I tell
It's not complicated, right, Coach?
no, I tell Brady, I go, I don't care if he's open, throw it to him. And it works. And so you got kids, he's really fun to watch. And then Lucas is a great story because Trey Dudley, he's a kid, he's got offers from James Madison, and I think he's committed to Syracuse now. But he's only played 3 games for us. He's struggled with an ankle injury and a hamstring injury, and we lost another tailback, our backup tailback who had to not continue playing for reasons. And then so we took our middle linebacker and put him at running back. He's the toughest, he's an all-state middle linebacker. And you know what? We were like, just run hard. Just don't overthink this, don't shake and find holes. He's been phenomenal for us. I mean, he really has. And then we asked him to go tackle their best players the whole time. So, he's really been a key to making this whole thing work as well.
Has he enjoyed playing running back?
Oh yeah, he loves it. He loves it. But I think he wants to run over people.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't think he doesn't seem to find space at all. Couple times I was like, if you just went left, you'd be in the end zone,
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay.
So he's doing a lot what he was doing on defense. He just happens to be carrying the ball.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's get to Riverbend. Now, look, Riverbend is an old school team. I understand. I didn't get a chance to see them play, but I understand they don't even pass the ball.
No.
I did watch part of your first half online the other day, but you beat them easily last year in the playoffs. I think 48-18 or something crazy. Well, that's not even crazy. That's normal these days in football. But when we were doing a preview show last week and we were talking about this game, and Riverbend was a top seed. So you figure, this is going to be an upset. You got to drive down past Fredericksburg to play them. But nowadays, games are shootouts. When me and you played, and I'm older than you. I don't want to age you, Coach, but the running game trumped the passing game back then because you always wanted to be able to control possession, and you could enforce your will on the other team with the running game. Nowadays, if a team has a running game, a team has a passing game, it's not so clear cut which is the advantage now because you want to be able to score quickly in this day and age. So I felt that you guys are very balanced, and maybe that would be the difference. But anyway, I didn't see the game. How did you feel going in, and how was the game?
Yeah, no, I mean it was. We just had to stop their running game. I mean, they run the football. They have a 2,000-yard running back. They run for 200 yards a game, 250 yards a game, or whatever. It wasn't, again, it wasn't a mystery what they were going to do. And then we felt pretty good about our offense. Like we felt like we could score some points against them. And we thought I would have been happy getting into a shootout, to be honest with you. The key was getting them off the field. We got to get their offense off the field and then get our offense the ball back. And, just we were able to do it. We were able to get 2 stops to start the game, 2 3-and-outs. I think we're better defensively than they thought. Just to be honest, I think that they felt like, well, we just ran the ball down Stonebridge's throat the week before, so we're going to just run the ball down their throat. I mean, we're a little better than you think, I think. And we knew it was coming. I mean, we just sold out. We just said, we gave up 2 touchdown passes. They don't ever throw the ball. And you're like, well, what did you do wrong? Well, because we just challenged them to throw the ball, and they did. And when they did, not surprisingly, they had some open guys because, we had 10 and 11 in the box. I mean, they're huge up front, 370, 350, 300. I'm and so we just had to keep throwing bodies at them. And we did. And our kids toughed it out. And once we got the ball back, and football, we got up 2 scores, and that, you'd say, oh, we killed them. The game could have gone very different, and we just got up 2 scores on a team that grinds and grinds and grinds, and they just kind of got out of what I think they do well, and that really we were able to kind of keep ahead that way, and that I think that really changed everything.
It can be hard to play from behind when you're a
Oh,
100% running team. You just
true. It's really hard.
yeah, it is. It is. You can't you lose your patience, and then the patience is what you what's got you there in the first place. Well, let's talk about LC Bird, and this is a familiar opponent for you. So tell us a little bit about Bird. How would you describe them offensively and defensively, and what are some of the keys to the game?
Yeah, they're super athletic. I mean, like we haven't really seen that kind of athleticism, I don't think all year. And how we match up with that is really going to be the key. Like up front, they're fast. I mean, they're just fast. And our linemen are going to have to try to keep them off our quarterback. I think scheme wise, I think we match up well. Like I think we'll, if we can block them, I think we'll have open receivers to throw to, but if we can block them is a really big question. I mean, we like I said, it's hard to simulate speed. In practice, obviously our second team isn't going to simulate that kind of speed, and in Loudoun County, it's a different brand of football up here, and it's so for us that's going to be the real challenge. And I think it's on both sides of the ball. I think that we got to contain them from getting a big play. Offensively, defensively, we can't give up, a big play. I mean, they got to, their running back runs a 10 600 meters, so we can't let him get loose. And and so if we can contain them the way we've been able to contain teams, and if we can block them up front, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I think it goes without saying that you're not going to spend a lot of time this week thinking about Maury. You're going to take it one game at a time, or when you're playing these playoffs, you have to scout in advance just to be prepared.
I don't look ahead. I
Yeah.
mean, I know how good they are. I know what they, I know who they are. They're one of those teams got 13 Division I kids, from a bunch of different neighborhoods. I'm sure, it is what it is, right? I mean, Coach Thompson will tell you about. I mean, he and I are good friends, so he's played him 2 years in a row. We know what we're up against when we get that far. Our world has to be just let's get that far. Let's get there. And let's put together the best plan we can when we get there. And so for us, that's kind of been our mantra. Like, let's go win our district. Let's go win the region. And then let's just take, when we get there, let's see who's left. Because there's only going to be 4 left, and they're going to be really good. And so let's just take them one at a time.
Yeah. Well, Coach, this has been great. One last question. When you think about Maury and their 15 Division I players, there's Phoebus, there's Highland Springs, there's John Marshall in basketball, and these teams accumulate great players in the area. John Marshall in basketball get kids get kids from New York City, but obviously there's been the Hayfield drama in Fairfax County. I'm not sure how closely you pay attention to any of that, but has that been something that you kept an eye on, and do you have any opinions of what's going on in Fairfax County?
Yeah, it's just the world. This is we've become a increasingly selfish world, I believe. And I don't mean to be cynical, but it's just
Mm.
where people are going to do what's good for them, and not what's good for each other, and I hope the world moves back. I hope the pendulum swings back a little bit where, I grew up, I would never have left my high school, like under any circumstances. I mean, I was a quarterback in an 0-10 football team, and guys on that team are in my wedding. I like that world, and now it's just the kids you've seen it, it started in the pros, it's trickled down to college, and it's not surprisingly finding its way to high school. It trickles down to youth teams where they put together these powerhouse little league teams, where guys are out there scouting youth football to get the best kids on their team instead of just saying, hey, these are the kids on your team, coach them and get them as good as they can be. There's become this obsession with accumulating talent instead of building talent and character, and so it's disappointing. I'm grateful the VHSL finally stepped up and said, let's try to do something about this. I think it's sad that people are fighting it back and not looking at it going, you're right, this is wrong. But But it's happening. It's not just happening at Hayfield. It's much bigger than that. I think Hayfield is just the first time somebody said enough's enough. But to think that it's not happening around the state and around the country, that's a little naive.
Coach, how about a rule where any transfers after freshman year have to sit out a year? Local transfers after freshman year have to sit out a year. Now, if you come from out of town, obviously military, whatever is fine. Would you be willing to look at rules like rules
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that?
I like people ask me all the time, what do you think? I said, for me, it would be relatively simple. I think if you don't move from within a 50-mile radius, then you have to sit. And it would hurt some kids. I understand there would be kids who truly moved 20 miles and have to sit a year.
Mm.
But to save the integrity of high school sports, somebody's going to have to suffer, I think. And I think you're going to have a rule like that where kids, if they transfer, there's going to have to be a change of residence of a, like you said, of a distance, I mean, so they obviously kids who are moving in from other states is going to be a different story. But this getting an apartment address and getting an electric bill and and changing your schools, it's got to stop. I mean, it doesn't have to stop. It's just it's if we want to put an end to this kind of stuff, then I think it's going to take a really strict rule like that.
Yeah. Well, Coach, this has been great. From one broken down lawyer to the other. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's obvious why you're so successful. I'm definitely cheering for you guys this week. I hope you guys is a game down at Bird or is it up here?
No, it's at home. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
What time
Yeah,
is the
we got
game?
lucky. Yep.
What time is the game?
2 o'clock Saturday at Briar Woods.
All right, 2 o'clock Saturday at Briar Woods for everyone. Hopefully, come support Briar Woods. But Coach, it's been great meeting you. I'd love to meet you. And I live outside Leesburg as well. Maybe at some point I can meet you face to face.
That would be great.
Yeah. All right, great, Coach. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks.
All right, buddy. Take care.